Well, hello there again. Another edition of our Conversation podcast. I'm Andy Kerridge, owner and founder of Wyvern Food Solutions, a company based in the middle of the UK, doing a variety of things from audits through to food safety support for large, medium and small companies, both in the UK and actually around the world. We've got a guest speaker today, our first guest speaker, so I'm just going to hand over to Cassie to introduce herself. But first, we're going to be talking, and why we've got Cassie on, we're going to be talking about COVID-19 and its effects on the GFSI ecosystem. And that covers things like remote audits, bench audits, behavior of CBs in terms of doing these audits, and the logistics of doing the audit. So Cassie's got a theme running on her website at the moment. So I'll hand over to Cassie to talk a little bit about that.
Hi, thank you. My name's Kassy Marsh. I'm the director of Techni-K Consulting. We're a little consultancy business in the UK, looking at consultancy around the country with a team of 8 consultants, and then we have a little small but mighty team in the office that look at training, development and supporting the industry. So we've got a blog that we publish every week called Techni-K Smart Knowledge, and that provides free information to techies around the world with regard to anything that's happening in the industry at the moment that's important for them to know about. So that's been going now for 4 years, I think. So we're constantly looking at the industry and trying to provide information back to those that need it in a timely manner.
Over to you, James. Introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm James Flynn. I'm CTO of Priority Limited. We are a UK-based food safety software solution provider, specialising in BRC, also foreign supplier verification program in the US, and so on. And we work closely with partners in industry, consultants, and large manufacturing companies as well. Over to you, Jennifer.
I'm Jennifer Crandall. I'm owner and founder of Safe Food en Route. We are also a food safety consulting firm. Our main focus, we're in the United States, and our main focus is helping small and medium-sized companies with their food safety programs and trying to provide that corporate level of program to those kind of companies to give more access to that kind of expertise. We have a team of about 10 consultants working with us now that helps with things like foreign supplier verification program or supplier compliance management or even quality assurance and food safety programs. Okay.
Okay, thanks everyone for that. Right, obviously COVID-19, we're in what, week 4, week 5 of lockdown in the UK. Impact on the industry varies from sites going ballistic, trying to get stuff out the door, to, heard this week of milk being poured away and potentially crops rotting in the fields because of lack of labour to pick them.
And cattle being slaughtered in the US because they can't get it to market because the plants are shut.
Yeah. And we have major outbreaks of COVID in some of our meat plants in the US as well.
Yeah, I was picking up on that yesterday. There was a piece from CDC where they'd gone into a plant in South Dakota and they were reporting. It was supportive, but it was reporting back on the measures that had been taken by the plant and then additional support that they felt should have been done in terms. I was really surprised at that, actually, because it's a problem I really only see seen particularly in Western Europe, is that in this plant in South Dakota, they had 40 different languages being spoken by the staff. And even in the top 10, there were some that I hadn't heard of. And I think, wow, this is a global problem of conveying information to people and making sure they understand it, which is another matter. But anyway, in terms of, that's what we're seeing in terms of the food industry. In terms of the 4 of us on the call being consultants do audits, and quite a lot of them do. and audits, the physical visits stopped. You know, I don't know. There are very few countries in the world which are accepting people flying in from Britain at the moment. There's nobody really wants to see strangers at the door at food factories. You know, and we know that even those that are supposed to be there, whether it be pest control or whatever, are sometimes struggling to gain access. So this has sort of rocked the world that we live in, because audits, you know, I mean, I remember the first, you know, BRC, and I was involved in 4 of the later editions, and I can remember the time before BRC, and you know, it's Thursday, it must be Sainsbury's because we have to, you know, we've got to have hand towels and things like that. So, you know, with people not visiting sites, there have been several attempts to try and find ways around that. So how, you know, how are you seeing that being done in the States there, Jennifer?
So, I mean, we have the same thing going on. We're not even allowed to travel outside of the state, in Kentucky. And so I'm based in Kentucky. But some of the other states are loosening their restrictions, and we
Georgia,
still, so we still have the essential, since we're part of the essential industries, I think it's not a difficult argument if we were to maybe go to another state to conduct an audit or do something like that. But I think, yeah, for the most part, we are grounded as well. So it's kind of, it's concerning whenever you think about people not getting governed on what their programs and what they're doing in their facilities, what's going on there. So yeah, I think we're echoing the same thing. But
are you seeing any move towards remote and benchtop audits, or you know, filling the gap?
I'm personally not seeing that word. I mean, my consulting company, we do everything remotely. So we are doing some gap audits. So I'm actually getting some increased movement and volume and interest. So I think that there is that side of it where we might be doing a little bit more remote work, but I'm not. A lot of my peers that I'm in groups with, like I'm on a Facebook group with a bunch of food safety women professionals, and I'm not seeing any changes in their behavior or any discussions of remote audits at this time.
Because we had a brief appearance of remote auditing with the BRC, and then GFSI sort of stepped in and displayed their lack of nimbleness in terms of adapting to the 21st century.
Cassie, I know that you were in touch with BRC about that. You know, can you give us a bit of background there?
Yeah, so when they published their position and that they would be giving the availability of remote audits, it's all based down on the site's discretion. The GFSI had already said that they should be going forward with certificate extension. So I'm not really sure why BRC took that decision at that time. Historically, they've been quite difficult. They find it difficult to provide accurate information in a timely manner, just because of the politics, I think, that happens within the company themselves. But I can only but presume that the confusion that was happening, because everything was changing so quickly at the time, that caused them to make the wrong decision at that time. It obviously did cause an awful lot of problems, and it caused an awful lot of extra work for sites and for the certification bodies during that time, because they'd already started to organise all the remote audits. They changed everything that they were doing, and then all of a sudden they had to stop and move things around. And that also caused a lot of friction between the certification bodies and the sites as well, because they were giving them quotes for remote audits, and then all of a sudden they were going for certificate extensions. So some of the sites got confused as to what they were being charged and got upset about it. It was a nightmare. But I've seen massive progress from BRC on that point in the last couple of weeks. Marketing director got in touch with me during that time, because I'd obviously published the information. And they communicated well with me during that time to make sure that I was up to speed with what was happening, and that they were working on it and something would be coming out. And since then, they have made massive strides to make sure that they've upped their game in terms of communication. they've built a specific part of the website to provide sites with information, which they were really listening to what we were saying, in that we needed answers to the questions that we were asking. Last Friday they did a webinar about the food standard, and then yesterday they published a guidance document on COVID as well. So they've never done anything like that before, so they obviously are really listening.
Yeah, that's quite incredible, because you're right, they haven't really responded to that like that kind of thing in the past, so why do you think that is?
I think maybe because I've called them out a bit on it. We've never had a voice before, and sites have always been the only way that the BRC communicates with the sites. And they've said this directly to me themselves, that their customers, if you like, direct customers, are the certification bodies. So yeah, as far as they're concerned, they should be communicating with the certification body, and it's up to the certification body to communicate with the sites. And I get that, I understand that. But unfortunately, it doesn't always happen, and because there is that disconnect between BRC and the sites, BRC don't get to hear the questions that are being asked.
Yeah.
They don't feel the pressure or the tension at site. So the blog that we've got going, because it's been around for a few years now, and it's got a lot of traction. I mean, we've got over 8,000 techies on that list that it goes out to each week all around the world. And so when I send something out, people read it and there's an impact. So yeah, the phones were going off the hooks at the certification bodies, asking them all questions about, are we doing remote audits or not, what's going on. So they I think they felt the message. So I don't know whether, I don't know.
Cassie, with the contact that I have at BRC, I have somebody that's doing business development that's reached out to me prior to all of this, and she was trying to build relationships more with companies like ours, and trying to gain insight on, ways that we could work together. And one of the things they were working on with me was trying to get a setup as like a training partner or something to that effect. So I was starting to see what I felt like was BRC reaching out directly and trying to communicate to companies that help prep the smaller and medium-sized companies. Do you see that as well on your side? Do you feel like that was happening prior to COVID?
Yeah, probably because they see me as a bit of a problem. I get why they would see that. It's not my intention to be that, but I just go with what the message is from the sites and try and help them resolve the problems that they've got. But they did reach out to me and ask me to meet them, and they asked me to become a BRC consultant, and I said, yeah, sure, I'm happy to do that if that means that you'll communicate more with me. That sounds good for me, it sounds good for the company, and it sounds great for the sites if that means I can get information that only the certification bodies are getting at the moment, and I can relay that to the sites, then that's great. Definitely want to do that. But unfortunately, when I went down that path, I've spent time filling in all the forms. I was just given to an admin person to deal with, and they came back and said, no, you're not qualified to do packaging. You can do storage and distribution, but only because it's very light food. And you now need to go on all the BRC courses to prove to us that you're competent. And I was like, do you not read any of the information that I provide? And they were like, well, no, that's on the internet, that's not valid. Yeah. So at that point, I was like, well, if I've got to spend that much time and money, I've got to pay for all these courses as well. We're only a small company, we can't afford stuff like that. Right. Then no, I'm going to have to walk away. I'm really sorry, but it was a shame.
So it's a 1980s approach all over again. I mean, it really is. If you just look around at the world of what's happening, and one tiny little virus has completely changed the landscape, at least for now, as to how things work. And I think companies need to be, even large organizations like BRC, GFSI, whatever, they have to be more nimble, because something changes in a supply chain, you know, and the next time it could be transmitted by food, for example, right?
Yeah.
You know, something changes in the supply chain, you need to be able to react immediately, get the word out, this is what the position is, this is what we're doing about it, here's the advice and everything else. When it's an emergency, you have to be able to do that. And I just feel that, you know, a lot of organizations, and I'm not dissing BRC or any particular organization here, what I am saying is that the old world of, you know, 2-year review cycles, 3-year review cycles on things is gone. We need to be able to adjust policy on food safety and so on almost within weeks, you know, or less even at times, when, especially when something like this happens.
But I suppose at the end of the day, the BRC is a trade body. It has two arms to it. Okay,
it's a trade body which was publicly sold a number of years ago to a life sciences company. Remember, right? So why have the retailers still got that kind of control over it, and the politics and everything else? This is my you talk about food safety culture. Where's the culture in terms of innovating and everything else that we were expecting here?
James, it's related to large companies. So, I mean, we see this all the time.
GFSI is,
Yeah, GFSI is a big organization, and they've already invested all their time and money and resources into it. And it's kind of like, once the train is on the tracks and it is moving and has momentum, they can't stop it, and they won't. And people are scared to make those decisions. They're scared to make that monumental, like, put the brakes on, and are afraid to adjust their direction. So
it's like an oil tanker.
And it's just like government. It's just like you know, education is the same way. Even nonprofits are all set up this way. They, you know, once they get to a certain size, once they get too big, they are no longer nimble, and they can't stop it. It's like one oar is not going to change the direction of that ship, unfortunately.
I think people's behaviour during this time has been the most interesting thing to me. Companies' behaviour, because, I mean, the certification bodies, the way that they've reacted to this has been amazing. You've got two massive ends of the scale of the certification bodies, like UK Food Cert, that are on the phone to the sites on a weekly basis, making sure that they're all right. Is there anything that you need? Communicating really well with them, charging them justifiable costs for the certification extensions. Kiwa, who've decided to waive their fees altogether because they've obviously seen the fact that BRC aren't charging their service fees for this certification body extension, certification extensions. And so they've seen the message in that and thought the right thing to do right now would not to be charged for these. They've obviously got the money behind them to be able to do that. They're obviously a big company, and then you've got the other side of the scale, where you've got certification bodies taking advantage of the fact that the sites can't change their cert body during this time to get a certification extension, so they have to pay the extortionate fees that they're saying that they're going to charge. And sites,
that's good. That's such a short-term view, isn't it? Because they may not be able to change them now, but by goodness, they're going to be changed. They'll be looking at all the alternatives.
Of course.
Were you able? Sorry, Cassie. Were you able to? I mean, noting that you quite rightfully decided not to fill in all the paperwork, etc., as you're going down the road of being a BRC consultant there, did you manage to find a way to get the communications that you thought you were going to be able to get access to, or is that still an issue?
I have a relationship with some of the guys at BRC, sure. I get on with a number of them, and I do feel like if I needed to, I can email them and they will respond. Certain ones will respond, but they are in a difficult position in that they're supposed to put their approved training partners and their approved BRC consultants in front of everybody else, and so talking to me when I'm not affiliated to them in any way isn't really I suppose it's not politically the right thing for them to be doing, so they have to tread quite carefully And I suppose they're probably worried about what they're going to say to me as well, because in case I go ahead and do something that they wouldn't like.
So we're talking about certificate extension, and there's another question I want to ask on that, but also start thinking about the other area which can't be really dealt with satisfactorily in this way is new suppliers coming on board in this way. But the certificate extension, I think there was one standard owner that wasn't allowing certificate extension. I mean, it's not one that's particularly widely used in the UK, but has that position changed?
Which one's that?
I think it was IFS.
I don't know, to be honest.
And I haven't really sussed out what that means. You end up, with your certification expiring. What can you do about it? That is a real communication challenge then with your customers. Some of whom you may not even know about, because people do select suppliers based on certification and the BRC database to select. You've got certification, but that certification is now expired. What are you going to do?
IFS isn't something that I've looked at recently, so I couldn't really comment. But there are a few, like the Lion Code, for example. I know they're pushing ahead with remote audits and live video to do that.
There was a posting on that yesterday, wasn't there? Somebody had just done one of those Lion Code audits and said it was just like, well, apart from the weather, etc., it was just like being there. And they've got sort of live feed and stuff like that. So, yeah.
I mean, one point that's just kind of popped into my head. You may have seen me writing some notes and doing a bit of Googling here, but, if, and this is something that's been, everybody knows that's been going on for a long time. There's a really large kind of power vacuum between the big retailer and small, medium-sized manufacturer that wants to get onto that ladder, right? Mm-hmm. We all know that. And that's just commercial business and so on. But what strikes me as interesting about Cassie's experience over the last few months, few years probably even, is that on the one hand you've got the GFSI standard owner, be it BRC, SQF or whomever, with whatever backdrop to that they've got. In the UK it's retailers, and in the US it's SQF, and so on. So is there space in the market for someone who is the kind of defender of rights of food manufacturing companies, kind of some of that role you sound like you're already doing a little bit of, Cassie, with information and, standing up for the little guy and, being able to communicate, because it's hard for all of them to communicate with BRC at the same time. But if you've got a representation channel coming through someone like yourself who is perfectly qualified for this role, never mind the professional BRC consultant role, is there a case for saying, Cassie, that something along the lines of Certified Food Manufacturers Association, a global one? We've got IFSQN there, you've got various other kind of groups that are out there, but you don't really have anyone who represents the views and needs and so on of the food manufacturers who are certified to one of the GFSI standards. What do you think about that idea, since you're about 25% of the way there by my calculations?
Right. I mean, that seems to be what we are becoming, not because that's what we intended on doing, but we just listen to what we're told and try and give back the information that's being requested. So in doing that, we obviously had the NCN Trending that we put together for food, and we've done that for packaging, and we're going to extend it for the others as well, so that the sites can see in real time the sort of NCNs that are coming their way, so that they can mitigate that and make sure that that doesn't happen to them, because all of that information is held up until that point by BRC and was only shared with a few, like Camden, for example, who would then use that to their, as far as I can see, my personal opinion, to their advantage, rather than sharing it for the good of everybody. And then when the whole CB thing came along, I thought, well, that's just the perfect way of getting that information in and being able to provide it back, because the techies that I talk to, they want to help each other, but they're stuck in a position where they can't share certain bits of information. So if they can do that to me, knowing that I'm not going to tell anybody who they are, and I can just share that information back to them anonymously, then that seems the right thing to do. Becoming a big corporation that's going to be tied up on all of the bureaucracy that I would imagine that will be in that sort of situation is not my cup of tea at all. I want to stay small, because like you said before, staying small means that you can pivot quite quickly and you can react to the situation and do the right thing for those that you're trying to serve. So I wouldn't want to actually get involved with those types of bodies. I'd prefer to stay on the side of the site and make sure I'm providing what they want and need.
So quick question back to you then, coming back to and I think you're right, by the way, don't take on the burden of someone else here from that point of view, stick true to your goals and your principles. But on the question of your kind of survey of the CB space and what the sites are telling you and whatnot, are you prepared to tell us who, based on what you're looking at, who would be your top picks for a CB to speak with? Don't necessarily, you can, if you want, share the ones that maybe didn't perform so well, but I'll leave that to you. I don't want to bring down the house on you or whatever, but I'm just interested in who you thought the good were, and if you can, who the not so good were.
I'd rather not say who the negative ones are, because I think the facts speak for themselves, and you can go onto the website and see the data for yourself.
Okay.
The good ones, I get lots of emails about the types of things that people are doing for one another, and like I say, UK Food Cert seems to be good. Kiwa seems to be doing good things. AIB seems to be good. It's the other ones that are causing themselves a problem at the moment that are a shame, because now that information's out there, it's for everybody to see, and the sites have never had that data to look at before. They've only been able to go off the BRC star rating, which is built for the BRC. It doesn't tell the site anything that's useful to them. So yeah, the quantity of data that we're starting to build now, obviously the number of forms that are being filled out isn't huge, but that's because we're slowly going through the process, and every time somebody has a certificate extension or an audit in the future, they'll come and add to that information. So it will build over time, and the more data we've got, the more valid that data will be, and we'll be able to manipulate it in different ways and show that back to people. The biggest problem that we've got at the moment is being able to do that, so it gives the individual site the information that they're particularly looking for. So, and at the moment there isn't any systems out there that we can use on the website to do that easily. So we're having to use the tools that we've got available to us at the moment. So
we can get a link to that form so that other people watching this can share that with you, Cassie. Is that right? We can put that in the show notes underneath, right?
Yeah, that would be great.
Excellent.
The more people that fill it out, the better the data will be, and the more information we'll be able to give back to.
Yeah, and this is about helping an industry at the end of the day. There's no agendas here from any of us, but companies need to get good levels of service, whether there's a crisis on or not, and they want to make sure that they are able to operate with the least number of problems and the lowest costs. Jennifer, you got something?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Well, I'm just curious, because right now all the information that is shared on your site is in pounds. And we had this discussion last week about collecting US data. Would you be willing to collect US data if we started sharing? I mean, obviously the podcast is going to get broadcasted all over the world. Are you collecting that data too?
Yeah, so when you fill out the form, it does ask you which country you're from, or which country the certification body is in. Obviously, as we put it together, because we're doing things so quickly, we have been learning as we go. So when we first got the data, we thought, oh, this says pounds and it's actually in America. That's not right. So we're having to constantly evolve the forms and the data to make sure it's right. But yeah, definitely the audit data that we've got on there at the moment, I think there's one or two from America, so we have changed that to dollars for now. But yeah, definitely.
Good. I think it's important because we're, I've been sharing, I actually shared your blog to my BRC contact. I was like, what are you guys doing about this? Like, I put pressure on them about it. And so I'm sure I didn't help the cause of them calling you. But I was definitely interested in it. And James and Andy and I were like, well, there's no reason you can't start that. I was like, I don't want to start collecting all that data. I'm like, maybe I should, but no, I'd much rather collaborate together and try to gather it together if we can. It's interesting. It's very helpful for those small and medium-sized companies that are making decisions to get certified and try to work towards it. And they can't afford certain things. So whenever I look at getting charged, it feels like they're getting price gouged currently by some of the CBs, and that's concerning, of course. But when I talk to one of my team members who is they are an active BRC auditor, that person has made sure that I was very aware of the administrative costs that do go into it, and mentioned that it can take 3 to 5 hours to file all the paperwork from their perspective to do all of it. So you don't want to see the small consultant who is an auditor on the side, or vice versa, not get paid. So there, it's like there's got to be a balance for it. But I think the information is very valid for the small and medium-sized companies that need that information to make decisions on what's the budget-friendly CB to go with.
Yeah.
All right. Obviously, we've been talking about the impact on auditors generally, but both you, Jennifer, and you, Cassie, have a team of people. What are they doing now, and what's been the impact of the COVID-19 on their activities?
From my side, I have one person who is a certified auditor for BRC, and then one that is working towards it. So the one working towards it, and this is not under Safe Food and Root, they're doing this on their own. So I just hire them, part-time. But they're the one that is training, she is waiting to do shadowing, and obviously she can't shadow. So she's not able to move forward with her certification until the restrictions lift. The other one is she's doing desk audits still, so kind of that remote version, or doing the extension paperwork, but is also available to do more work for me to fill in some of those gaps. And then she's picking up some other clients and doing consulting on the side just to fill in the gaps that she normally would have been doing, because she travels pretty much at least once a week. So she's, I think, Andy, you've said that too, where you're doing a lot more at home. That's basically what she's doing as well.
I have my first remote audit coming up on Monday. Now, it's not a food production site, it's a distribution center. But yeah, we've run through it, and I'll report back on how it goes. Yeah, we're not going to be using the very latest in smart technology. It's just going to be on somebody's mobile phone. Which surprised me, bearing in mind the customer. Not going to give any names out, but I would have expected to be using a little bit more of the sort of technology that some of us with bigger glasses might be thinking about.
I've got two pairs. I've bought one pair. One pair I've sent to one of our customers in Arizona. They'll be getting there next week, so we're going to test that out again.
Good stuff.
And another pair has gone to our US import agent business, so that we can send them out to a site that we are, trying to approve for FSVP and stuff. So we're testing this stuff out at the moment.
So James, quickly, just curious, is your intent that your clients will buy those and have them in house, or are they going to kind of lease them and give them back?
Well, I think there's we need to check out what the models are that are sustainable. So one of the options is, as you say, that on an FSVP assessment, you're doing one of these every 3 years, for example, for a given product. It makes more sense to, rather than charge them $800 for a pair of glasses, just courier them out, get them back when you're done, and if they don't return them, you charge them then. So you've got that kind of thing. Then you've got maybe like this manufacturer we're working with. Andy and I are both working on that project. It's a small manufacturer, but they don't have a full-time on-site technical manager. So we send the glasses in. And that means that Andy can pop in, schedule an hour. We're, you know, with that particular client, we're looking at environmental swabbing. Where's it going to happen? You know, what are they going to look for and stuff. This is perfect for us to walk through the factory and really have a good look at what's going on, you know. So that's the other kind of test case there.
Yeah, I mean that's a bit, sorry James, I mean there's two extremes there. In one case, the guys in the States that we're shipping these glasses to, we are friendly fire, you know, we are, you know, it's almost like an internal audit, because, you know, whereas the FSVP is more of an external audit. And
absolutely.
Really got, and that's the two types of opportunities really there. Is if you're doing the internal audit, which could be in real life an internal audit conducted by a home office based technical manager, somebody who's isolating or whatever. They know the site, you know, they know where the skeletons are buried and all, where the wick fridges are and all that sort of thing, so they can do that. But when you're doing it on a site you are actually conducting a second or third party audit on, then that's a little bit more difficult if you don't know the site. Yeah, for sure.
Right.
But I mean, you know, the starting point is, you know, the fundamental starting point is that if the technology doesn't work, everything's academic.
Yeah.
So we've got to start with
try it out. Yeah.
We've got to start with reviewing the technology. How reliable is it? How good is it? Can we get our audit in the eyeglass so you can see it VR in front of you? Yep. Can you tap your way through this and get it done? That's the first point for me. If that works, then everything else is about what kind of audit is this? How do I plan it? Yep. What are the obstacles I'm going to have to overcome? Connectivity in a factory, for example. You know, do I need this to work offline? There's all sorts of other stuff. But you know, I think
I'm going to I'll add to your list. What about sanitation of the glasses if they're returned?
Mm-hmm. Well, yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, alcohol and sanitizer wipe or whatever, if you can get them. But I want to go back to Cassie, because I did kind of interrupt and cut Cassie's flow off there. But so Cassie, we had asked Jennifer about the sort of impact on the consultants she was working with and so on. What you know, you said you've got 8 consultants and you've got, you know, a number of people in your office and working in the team there. Just describe for us a little bit about what you're seeing there in terms of both their experience and yours with the last few weeks.
What's changed?
Yeah. So the consultants are all working from home. Mm-hmm. So we have carried out a risk assessment and switched around. Most of what we do is internal audits for the sites. So we've done a risk assessment and switched around the types of audits that we're doing so that
we're losing you a little bit, Cassie. What happened? And there's the dog. Your new puppy chewed through the cable.
I'm back.
You're back again. Yeah,
you're back.
Yeah, you're back.
So we've switched to doing more internal audits that are more paper-based, leaving the more practical ones until hopefully the restrictions are lifted a little bit so that we can get into sites. For us in the office, we're all working from home as well. All our normal orders for the documentation that we do is all just dried up completely. That was a little bit of a surprise, because I thought with everybody working from home that they may take this opportunity to improve systems and things, but that's not come out. Training, because we are very digital, we thought maybe that would be okay, but that's dried up a little bit too.
Really?
So
yeah.
What it would have expected, but that's the situation that we're in. This year for us, our main aim was to develop all of the level 2 food safety and GMP courses for all the different product sectors, so that we've got one for every single product, and packaging and storage and distribution as well. And we're going to launch them in 3 other languages as well. So for us in the office, that was what we were working on. That was our development for this year. So we're just carrying on with that, steaming ahead as much as we possibly can do. And then try not to get too distracted by everything that's going on around us, but obviously being able to then provide as much support as we can for the sites and give them the answers to the questions that they've got. So the daily updates, or every other day, whenever it needs to be. Normally we would do an article once a week that would go out on a Wednesday, but we reacted to the situation and thought, well, that's not going to work anymore. People don't want to wait until the next Wednesday to get the information that they need. So started sending things out every day when it was required. So most of my day, and Steph that we work with on an IT perspective as well, he's helping me with putting all the forms together and building the website and stuff to make sure it's giving everybody what they need. So we're sort of doing half a day on that each day, and the rest trying to not get too distracted and get some work done as well.
Yeah,
wow.
and that's a very interesting point. Sorry, Andy, but it's a very interesting point about it is so easy to become distracted by all of the panic that's around you and the negative news and you know, the terrible news that is there. You know, it's like, wow, you know, I mean, it kind of, I don't know about you guys, but it does kind of suck the life out of you at times, you know.
Yes.
I mean, and it's I have to watch the news in the morning, watch the news in the, you know, late afternoon, and that's it, because otherwise you're like, God, this is so depressing, you know, and of course it's going to get worse, you know. And
well, it's also not helped by the infantile behaviour of some of the interviewers that are going on.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, let's just say the infantile behaviour of some of our global leaders, for example.
Yeah, well,
you know,
right,
I mean,
okay.
None to be named here.
this is not a political show, you know, but,
No.
there are some. Let's just say there are some crazies out there. That's it, you know.
Yeah.
All right,
true.
that's enough.
Yeah.
I am surprised to hear about the training, because I suppose when you think about it, with sites either being working like crazy or, you know, people all being shut down, there isn't that time for people, you know, they're either not working or that they haven't got the time to do the training. So
yeah, I'm not surprised by that, Andy, because I'm seeing the same thing.
Okay.
So a couple of my team members, we've tried to pitch some training to a CB who was just outsourcing the training to consulting companies, and we have heard it's been crickets. We're not hearing a thing. It's like they're not making that next step to work with this. And they were planning on training 9 people on site, and then it just kind of dissolved. So I'm not sure what happened, but I don't think we were overly priced in any way. So I'm not sure what the reasoning was, but it's drying up for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer for a first cull of finances. If you're worried in any way whatsoever about, you know, whether these people that you're going to train are still going to be here in 6 months because of COVID or whatever,
right?
You know, because of restrictions, then the first thing you're doing is you're putting a freeze on all training, and then you're putting a freeze on all recruitment, and then, you know, you're coming down the kind of priorities, the financial priorities. But what I've noticed is that, you know, the customers who kept me most busy and interacted with us most before COVID are the same ones that do so afterwards, you know. So I'm spending as much time with customers, working through, you know, where we're going with our solution, looking at technical issues, and you know, configuring the system to do what they need it to do, and so on, you know. So yeah, I've not really seen any change. We've got a couple of small subscriptions dropped off on our software product, but nothing major at this stage, you know. So, but let's be real, we can't all afford this to keep going on forever, because it means that the money in companies' pockets, the money in people's pockets, those two things are extremely important for the economy, and you know, that is dwindling. And the
this is why they're saying
the longer it goes on, the tougher it's going to get, you know.
I mean, no matter what the government's tried to say about it being based on science, at the end of the day, it's a political decision as to what happens next.
Yeah,
it's very
economic. I mean, that's what's happening. Certainly in Georgia and whatever is, you know, people. It's the economy. At the end of the day, is, you know, plus, you know, a certain amount of public pressure. People are getting, you know, stir crazy and want to do something. So anyway, I mean, okay, we're coming up to the hour, and I'm just thinking, well, you know, the conversation's going well, but we do need to think about where is this going, and what longer term impact is this likely to have on food industry and indeed certification and audits. And I have my views in terms of audits, but which I'm quite happy to spout out left, right, and centre. But before we get into that, let's go back to Cassie, because, you know, that's a fundamental part of your business as well, is auditing. Where do you see this going? We've got the chink in the armour in terms of, you know, desktop audits and some level of remote audits. Is it the beginning of the end for the traditional, ceremony of the annual audits, or auditing overkill and all that?
I'm actually writing an article about this at the moment, because we had a team meeting the other week to talk about what happens next and what will the world look like. And we sort of have a bit of a dream that something good is going to come out of all of this. And what we would like to happen is, we've never been in a situation where we can sit and take stock of where we are and how things have been in the past and what would we like the world to look like for us from an auditing perspective in the future. And for me, I would like things to be much more transparent. Chris Elliott gave a speech ages ago where he talked about being able to share audit information so that sites don't get the same audit over and over and over again, so that you can also have audit A happening and then that information is shared to all that site's customers, and when audit B happens they can build on audit A and not cover the same ground, but they can look into more depth in things where they may need more attention or look into different areas. So for example, you could have a BRC audit and that information is shared by that site to all of their customers. And then if you're producing product for Tesco's or for M&S, they can come in and do their audit above and beyond what's already been done, and that gets shared. And if there's a specific that a particular customer needs, they come in and do that audit above and beyond everything else that's already been done, to try and minimise the amount of audits that are happening, and to make sure that they're much more valid. They add more value. That's my thing. I've got to add value. So to me, that would be amazing. And I get that that's so far out there from where we are right now. But if we aim for that, then maybe we're going to get a little bit further that way than we are at the moment. There are sites that say, no, my audit report is confidential, or even sites that say my certificate is confidential and you can't have it, or my supplier certificates are confidential and you can't have them.
Well, this is a very, very interesting point, Cassie. We spoke about this, I think, last week or something, Andy and Jennifer. And one of the things we're doing in 3i Verify is the certificates are being uploaded, the audit reports are being uploaded, and all these things. And we've got our new AI scan tool, which is about to launch very, very soon. And that purpose of that is to bring everything together from different sources. So at the moment, we're not sharing audit reports, but we are allowing certificates to be shared to all of 3i Verify's customers. So if I upload a certificate and there's a BRC certificate, then everyone can see that, and they don't then need to go chase that, for example. And I think this has to be the future of what you're talking about there, rotating the scope of the audits so that they're not getting asked the same question every single time. And then you can actually get much more closer to a continuous improvement loop that is really focusing in on the areas of weakness and making sure that the attention is on them, and and really driving continuous improvement, because that's supposed to be the point, isn't it?
And it's also, I mean, I use the word continuous, it then moves towards the idea of being more continuous assessment. And not a point in a year where everything comes to a head. It's it evolves as it goes along, and that site is every audit is just another data point in that continuous assessment of that supplier.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I think there are lots of sites out there that won't share that information, but to me that speaks volumes.
Yeah.
And they can carry on doing that if they want to, but if I was looking for a supplier for an ingredient, would I choose a company that wouldn't want to share information with me that is important to my due diligence?
And we shouldn't hold things up, because of the lowest common denominator on that one. There are sites that are prepared to share, so let's highlight those and work with those.
Yep.
Okay, and we come to the hour now. Any closing thoughts? And Jennifer, from you?
I was just thinking, I love the, I feel like that is a really cool point of view to kind of build on the audits. I like that idea of continuous improvement. I'm kind of challenging the retailers, if any of them are listening, because I think this is time to start rethinking the approach of not necessarily taking away GFSI or anything like that, but really rethinking the approach, because we talked about this a few podcasts ago about the companies who are trying to pivot to start working in a different industry. So, you know, manufacturers for food service companies, you know, I'm seeing restaurants shut down in my local area. They're closing their doors forever. So knowing that we are still going to have this surplus of food that needs to go and be distributed elsewhere, and that company does not have a GFSI, a benchmark audit scheme in-house, then they are not going to be able to pivot. They're not going to be able to move to some of these retailers. So I think that it, you know, like looking at that continuous improvement, giving a structure, some kind of recommendation in the policies, some flexibility in policies to be able to do some type of phased approach to getting up, you know, improving their standards and making sure they meet some minimum food safety standards would be a great start to move. And even not just retailers, because of course I've come from a retail background, but you know, this is to any of those larger organizations that are pulling in some of these you know, small and medium-sized food companies that have great quality product and they have nowhere to go with it because everything changed in March of 2020. So, you know, I think it's important that people start thinking proactively, what can we do to make sure that we don't lose some of these businesses, because we're going to start losing them. We've already said that we will. And like I said, I'm starting to see it. So I hate to see that happen. And I want to see as many of them survive as possible. If they have to have a place, an outlet to go, that is allows them to grow and to improve their programs.
We tend to forget that there are many more sites that are not GFSI than are GFSI certificated. There's a huge market out there of non-GFSI, and a large proportion of them actually don't want to be. You know, right. It's either outside their scope in terms of the resources necessary, or their customers aren't demanding it. But that, you know, we sort of get a bit blindsided by GFSI, BRC, and the rest of it.
Yep.
Cassie, any views from you? Closing views?
No, there's nothing from the troublemaker.
Where are you going to be publishing this piece on the
hashtag troublemaker?
I like it.
Where are you going to be published? Where will we see this coming up? In your blog, or is it going to be somewhere else?
So it'll go out on Smart Knowledge.
Okay.
I'm
not sure whether I'll put it underneath the coronavirus update because it's getting so huge at the minute. I might do it separately.
It's more of, you know, after coronavirus. So,
sure. Yeah.
And James, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's a great opportunity. There always is opportunity, right? The technology exists, the brains exist with people. We know how to do this, you know. What we need is for someone to take leadership in the GFSI and standards owners and so on to say, you know what we're doing now isn't the best way to do it. Whether COVID's here or not, it's not the best way to do it. So how can we build a future-proof, more transparent, more equitable way to look at companies, food companies in the food supply chain, and be able to make sure that they're legal, safe, they're authentic, and everything else. And you know, does it need to be that you're GFSI or not GFSI? I mean, why can't we have something that is a bit more of a spectrum? Yeah. I know we've got global markets program, but you know, something that kind of allows access for these smaller companies, many of whom are going to struggle on the return from this virus, for example. So it's about resilience and transparency. But I love Cassie's idea. I think that's a great way forward. How we could make that happen or not, and I don't know. You know, I hope people are listening and really pick that up and go with it. You know, we won't come and charge you a consultancy fee if you do it, right?
Well, we might.
At some point there will. Yeah. Okay, I think that brings us to an end of this fourth episode in our conversation podcast, which
I think you should keep all this in. It's brilliant.
I do too.
Absolutely. So
I'm
what
totally
what,
with Cassie. We'll leave it on here. We're just going to call it episode 6.
Well, what Andy
You got me offset there by the. I was looking at episode 6 and I'm trying to say 4, and I just got looking at one saying another is just
Right. Right. Do you want me to finish it, Andy?
Oh, you do it, because I'm now laughing. I'm going to break into split up every time.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching this 4th episode of the conversation. We've had a great time today discussing lots of stuff, and please, as always, add in some comments. Tell us what you want us to discuss. Like us, share us, all that kind of stuff, and tell your colleagues about us. I'm just going to say I've been James Flynn and Andy and
Jennifer Crandall
and Cassie the troublemaker.
Cassie the troublemaker. Right. We'll see you all next time, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.